The soft chime of my phone broke the quiet of my apartment, and for a moment, I hesitated, pretending not to hear. I had promised myself mornings would be mine, sacred and undisturbed, yet there it was, a message from an unfamiliar number, and my chest tightened. The silk of my blouse felt unusually cool against my skin as I reached for it, the sunlight filtering through the tall windows casting gold streaks across the polished floor. "Hannah, we need to talk. It's urgent," the text read. Simple, yet it carried the weight of a past I thought I'd left behind. My fingers hovered over the screen, heart fluttering with a cocktail of curiosity, pride, and a faint sting of old wounds. I poured my coffee slowly, the rich aroma grounding me as I replayed memories I didn't want to revisit. My life had changed, my career, my home, my independence, yet certain faces and voices lingered in shadows. Faces that once dismissed me, voices that had said, "You're not really family." I glanced out at the city below, its energy humming through the glass like an unspoken promise. I had learned to survive on my own, to thrive quietly, to carry the truth of my success silently while the world assumed my struggle. And yet, here was a thread pulling me back, daring me to confront the past I'd meticulously tucked away. Taking a steadying breath, I typed a reply, fingers firm, pulse steady. Whatever this was, I wouldn't flinch. I had learned long ago. Some debts were never financial. They were about respect, recognition, and reclaiming what was always yours. I remember that day like it was yesterday, though years have passed. I was younger then, eager to please, full of hope, and painfully naive. My brother-in-law, Jason, had come to me with a desperate plea. He needed money, just a small loan, he said, the kind that felt harmless at first, until it wasn't. My husband's family gathered in the living room, their eyes darting between us like hawks, and I could feel their judgment even before the words left their lips. "You can't do this, Hannah," my sister whispered sharply, her voice laced with warning. "We don't need outsiders meddling in family matters." Outsiders. That word cut deeper than I expected, and I felt the lump rise in my throat. I tried to explain, to say that helping Jason didn't make me less a part of this family, that I wanted to be supportive, but the room went cold. Their glares were icy daggers, and I could see the betrayal flicker in their eyes that had called me family one day and not family the next. I clenched my hands in my lap, the polished wood of the table pressing into my skin, my pulse hammering in my ears. My grandmother's words echoed softly in my mind. "Hannah, true strength isn't in bending to others' expectations, it's in standing firm when they try to sway you." She had given me a delicate silver locket that morning, her gift and her symbol of faith in me. I pressed it to my chest now, feeling its reassuring weight. I shook my head, refusing to let tears blur my vision. I said no, firmly, without hesitation. Jason's face fell, confusion and anger mingling, while the rest of the family recoiled as though I had committed an unforgivable crime. I could see it all. The whispered conversations, the judgment, the disbelief that a woman could draw a line and stand her ground. That moment was pivotal. The sting of rejection burned, yes, but it also lit something within me, a quiet fire. If this family would cast me aside for doing what I felt was right, then I would forge my own path. I would not crumble. That silver locket pressed to my heart became more than a trinket. It became a reminder that I could survive, even thrive, on my own. That day, I made a decision. No more relying on the approval of those who didn't see my worth. I would build a life that they couldn't ignore, one piece at a time. After that fateful confrontation, I threw myself into a world I barely knew, guided only by instinct, determination, and the tiny silver locket my grandmother had given me. I started small, taking on freelance projects that paid little but taught me everything about patience, precision, and perseverance. The nights were long. My apartment dimly lit by a single desk lamp, coffee steaming beside my laptop, my fingers stiff from typing reports and proposals until my eyes blurred. But each small win felt monumental. I was no longer a passive observer in my life. I was the architect. I met a mentor during those early days, a woman named Claudia, a seasoned entrepreneur with a sharp mind and a softer heart. She saw the fire in me that my family had ignored. "Hannah," she said one evening over takeout in her cramped office, "you're holding yourself back because you're trying to please people who will never see your worth. Let that go. Build for you, not for them." Her words were a balm, her belief a scaffold I clung to while learning the ropes of business, investments, and strategy. The journey wasn't glamorous. I stumbled constantly, misread contracts, underestimated costs, faced clients who doubted me at every turn. There were evenings I sat on the floor of my tiny apartment, knees drawn to my chest, whispering to myself that I couldn't quit, that I had to prove it, not to them, but to me. I learned to embrace discomfort as part of growth, the sting of failure as an essential teacher. Then came the small victories that began to shape a life I could barely imagine in my past. My first profitable client, a contract that exceeded my wildest expectations, felt like a secret triumph. Each deposit into my account was a quiet affirmation that I was capable, that I was creating something lasting. Slowly, I diversified, expanded, and learned to leverage my talents in ways my family never imagined. Through it all, I kept my success hidden. My social media accounts were modest, my family receiving only the occasional vague update about work projects. They assumed I was struggling, as I once had. And that was exactly how I wanted it. There was a strange comfort in knowing that my achievements were mine alone, untainted by their doubt or scrutiny. I would reveal the full picture when the time was right, not out of spite, but as a natural consequence of the life I had built, one they couldn't ignore or diminish. Looking back now, I realized that those quiet, solitary years shaped the woman I was becoming, resilient, patient, confident, and fiercely independent. The silver locket still rested against my chest each morning, a gentle reminder of where I had started and the fire that had never dimmed. I wasn't just surviving, I was quietly, deliberately thriving. The foundation was laid. My success was hidden, yes, but ready. And I knew, without a doubt, that one day, the people who had once dismissed me would finally meet the woman I had become, and they would see her full strength. The knock on my office door was polite, almost tentative. I glanced up from my desk, where a neatly stacked pile of contracts and financial reports bore testament to years of effort and determination. The voice on the other side called my name. "Hannah, can we come in?" It was Jason, my brother-in-law, and behind him, a few familiar faces I hadn't expected to see, not yet anyway. I allowed them in. I didn't rise immediately. Instead, I watched, letting their eyes roam across the room. Expensive, abstract art adorned the walls, a sleek oak desk anchored the center of the space, and shelves lined with awards and accolades spoke louder than words ever could. A faint aroma of vanilla and polished wood filled the air, and sunlight streamed through the tall windows, highlighting the subtle elegance of the room. Everything was deliberate, a silent testimony to the life I had quietly built while they assumed I was floundering. Jason's jaw tightened, and I could see disbelief flicker in his eyes. My sister's lips parted, but no words came. The others shuffled, uncomfortable, unsure where to look, what to say. I leaned back slightly, feeling the familiar weight of the silver locket against my chest, and allowed a small, controlled smile to play at my lips. "I assume you all expected to find me struggling," I said softly, letting the words linger. They flinched almost imperceptibly at the calmness in my tone. "Perhaps you imagined that years of disappointment would have broken me, that I'd have bent to the pressures, the judgments, the labels, that I'd be smaller than I am now." Their silence was deafening. Jason swallowed hard, his pride warring with recognition. My sister's hand hovered over her mouth, disbelief etched across her features. I stood, walking slowly around the room, letting my presence fill the space, letting them see the woman who had refused to be dismissed. I didn't just survive. I continued. I built something lasting. I'm the owner of my company, financially independent, respected in my industry. Every challenge, every setback, every door that closed in my face only pushed me harder. And yes, every penny I refused to lend in the past was an act of respect for myself. I paused, letting my words sink in. Their faces were a mixture of shock, shame, and awe. Jason's shoulders slumped, a silent admission of the mistakes he had made, while my sister's eyes glistened, a complex mix of regret and admiration. "You see," I said, walking back to my desk, "the family that declared me not family, well, they didn't just underestimate me, they underestimated the life I could create without them. And now, the circumstances have shifted. The debts, the struggles, the hardships you face today, they're lessons perhaps in humility. But they do not erase the past. They simply illuminate the path I took while you were busy judging me." I let them absorb the weight of my words, feeling a quiet satisfaction. Not revenge, not cruelty, just the undeniable truth. The woman standing before them was no longer the one who had been dismissed, ridiculed, or underestimated. She was someone who had claimed her life, her worth, and her power, and they were forced to see it fully, unapologetically. Jason's lips trembled, as if he wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. I smiled faintly, returning to my chair, a calm center in a storm of their silent realizations. The reveal was complete. They now knew, without a shadow of doubt, that the girl they once dismissed had become the woman they could neither ignore nor diminish. The room was heavy with silence. Their faces reflected a mix of guilt, shame, and an unspoken question. What now? I let them sit with it for a moment, allowing the tension to settle like dust before I spoke. I didn't raise my voice, didn't gesticulate wildly. My calm presence carried more weight than any outburst ever could. "You're here because you need something," I began, my tone even measured, but carrying an edge they hadn't anticipated. Jason's eyes flicked nervously, avoiding mine. "And I could help. But there's a difference between helping and repeating old mistakes. I'm no longer the person who bends under expectation or guilt." I paused to let that sink in, noticing how each of them shifted slightly in their seats. I saw it all. The discomfort, the awareness that the balance of power had changed. "If I choose to support any of you," I continued, "it will not be blindly. There are conditions, standards you must meet. Not because I want to punish you, but because you need to grow into people worthy of being part of my life and my circle." I turned to Jason first. "You will handle your finances responsibly. No more reckless borrowing. No more assumptions that someone else will clean up your mistakes. I'll guide you, yes, but you will implement what I teach. You will learn accountability, because your past irresponsibility has consequences that cannot be ignored." My sister, eyes still wide with a mix of awe and shame, received her conditions next. "You will respect my boundaries," I said gently, yet firmly. "You will acknowledge that your judgments hurt me and that your approval is not the measure of my worth. You will work on empathy, truly seeing people beyond what they can do for you." I looked around the room, making eye contact with each person, letting them feel the gravity of their choices. "For everyone here," I said, letting my voice soften just enough to show care, "this isn't about punishment. It's about accountability, growth, and understanding. I will not financially bail anyone out without proof of effort and responsibility. Your dreams, your ambitions, and your integrity must align with these principles." Jason swallowed hard, nodding slowly, a flicker of humility breaking through his previous arrogance. My sister's lips trembled, her pride warring with recognition of her past mistakes. The room was charged with an unspoken truth. I was no longer a passive participant in their narrative. I was the one setting the terms, the one defining how support was given, and it was tied to respect, responsibility, and genuine change. Finally, I allowed a small, confident smile. "I care about you, yes," I said, letting the warmth in my voice soften the edges of authority. "But I care about myself too. And I will not allow the past to dictate my present or my future. We will move forward, but only with honesty, growth, and integrity. Those who accept this path may benefit from my support. Those who don't will learn that life has its own lessons." I leaned back in my chair, a quiet authority settling around me. For the first time in years, the dynamic had shifted completely. The girl they once dismissed was gone. In her place stood a woman who demanded respect, not through anger, but through the undeniable power of her success, wisdom, and moral clarity. Months passed, and the shift I had initiated began to take root. Jason attended financial counseling sessions I arranged, no longer brushing off responsibility. I watched him balance budgets and make deliberate decisions, each step a quiet but powerful acknowledgement of past mistakes. My sister, too, began to show subtle but real change, checking in with me honestly, listening without judgment, and gradually learning empathy that had once eluded her. I noticed these changes not with triumph, but with a deep sense of calm. I didn't crave revenge. I craved growth, for them and for myself. I realized that the power I had discovered was not in money or status alone, but in self-respect, perseverance, and the ability to rise above those who doubted me. The silver locket my grandmother had given me years ago still rested against my chest some mornings, a quiet symbol of faith, resilience, and guidance. It reminded me that the journey was never about proving them wrong. It was about proving myself right. Even as they learned, I continued my life with the same focus and joy that had carried me here. My mornings were peaceful, my work meaningful, my achievements real. I felt no bitterness, only gratitude for the lessons that had forced me to claim my independence. I could meet the world with confidence, knowing that my worth was never contingent on anyone's approval. One afternoon, as sunlight poured through the windows of my office, I held the silver locket and allowed myself a rare smile of quiet reflection. I had endured doubt, rejection, and subtle cruelty. I had faced moments where giving in would have been easier, safer, softer. And yet, I had persisted, building a life that was unmistakably mine, defined not by others' expectations, but by my own vision, courage, and integrity. Looking at my reflection in the glass, I whispered, almost as a private affirmation, I am not defined by their doubt, their rejection, or their expectations. I am defined by my courage, my choices, and the life I have built. I am family to myself, first and always. And in that simple, unwavering truth, I found closure, strength, and a grace that no judgment could ever diminish. The debts had shifted, yes, but more importantly, the balance had finally, completely, returned to where it belonged.